Welcome back to the Wild Geese PBI Museum. Again, I kind of wanted, as we progress with the story of how the museum began, one of the greatest motivators for me was simply one day while being at one of my best friend's house, it was finding a silver star that adorned the top of a refrigerator. Of course, I recognized being the second highest award you possibly could obtain, and I immediately asked, where and how did this happen? So I was told by my friend about his uncle, Donnie Cuny. And what happened is that Donald Cuny was a young man going to school in Illinois during World War II. And he immediately wanted to get involved and do something for his nation, as most of the folks back then did. He joined the United States Marine Corps, and it was told that he lost his life. According to the family folklore, is that he was killed in the line of duty by friendly fire incident with close air support. So, of course, it was odd that he would be awarded a Silver Star, and we wanted to know more about it. So we decided at that point in time to start doing, as both law enforcement officers, our form of detective work. What had happened was his family, his mother, had collected and kept boxes and boxes of documents. We were able to obtain these boxes, and for weeks on end, it was a treasure trove of letters from Donnie to home, to his mother, to his father, to his brother, telling about his time at boot camp, talking about his hopes, his fears, his dreams. Every document that we touched, whether it be a card from the USO, handwritten by Donnie with anticipation of going to the Pacific Theater and not knowing what would happen next. Donnie's career in the Marine Corps was amazing. He became a linguist that could actually speak basic levels of Japanese. He was an infantryman, and it was going to happen that he ultimately would be assigned to the invasion force of an island known as Peleliu. Peleliu was heavily fortified by the Japanese army as they had progressed and taken over island after island to deny the United States forces, Australian and British, an easy approach towards the mainland of Japan. Many of these islands they had fortified, they had dug trenches, and they had had many years to defend, to create a defense that was extremely formidable. On the 17th of September 1944, the invasion of Peleliu occurred. Landing forces touched down on the southern part of the island. Donnie was in that first wave. As you can see from the items that are now in the museum of Donnie, one of the most prized possessions that I can say that I have is his military manual, or the Marine Corps manual, where he had basically, at basic training, been able to learn all of the skills that he would use in the field that day. Other things that are now part of this are the V letters. The last letter home to his family, just days prior to the landing at Peleliu. When you read this, it is like so many of these prized possessions. You read the hopes and the fears of a young man, and you, unfortunately, as a viewer, as a historian, know the fate that awaited this young man. Donnie, as a landing force occurred, they pushed in, and on the southern part of the island, there was a Japanese airfield. As they made their way into the airfield, the Japanese mounted an attack with light machine gun tanks. These were thin-skinned vehicles armed with multiple air-cooled machine guns. If it was a tank versus tank environment, the Japanese tanks would not fare even a fair fight. They would have been destroyed immediately. But they were attacking infantrymen armed with very little. At that time, Donnie was armed with a grenade launcher, an M7 launcher, which was attached to the end of his rifle. Most likely, it was an M1903 bolt-action rifle. These rifles were made, well, they were precision rifles that had ultimately come about during World War I and had been brought back again as a designated sniper rifle, but also as a grenade launching material. The grenade that he had at the end of this rifle was an M9A1 anti-tank rifle grenade. He ultimately knew that if this machine gun, this tank was allowed to come any closer to his platoon, that multiple men would die that day. Without thinking twice and knowing that he had to do something, he stepped out from behind cover and he engaged that light machine gun tank. This is a photo of that tank on that day. He was able to disable the tank. The grenade was effective in throwing the track off the vehicle, making it a stationary, but unfortunately still lethal bunker. That machine gun was then turned on him, and unfortunately Donnie was hit multiple times with machine gun fire. From all that we can obtain from that information that day, Donnie would ultimately last maybe 1 or 2 hours, and then he would succumb to his wounds. This same day of the invasion of Peleliu was also the invasion in the European theater, better known as Operation Market Garden. It is amazing to see 2 different theaters of operation with thousands of men moving forward against the Axis powers, and ultimately to make the world free from the tyranny that both the Japanese and the German nations brought. When Donnie succumbed to his wounds, he was buried at a temporary cemetery on Peleliu. The chaplain assigned to his unit ultimately would take a picture by every one of the fallen soldiers, and the chaplain would kneel by the grave with the name of each soldier, and these photos ultimately would be sent to the fallen. It would take weeks before family were aware that Donnie was lost, and when it hit, it was devastating. Many of the letters that we went through were letters of condolence from friends, other family members. There were even cards of condolences from the funeral. There was so much confusion about what had happened to Donnie, and finally, towards the end of the war in 1945, Donnie's family was contacted by many of the men that served with him, and they were able to tell what happened to him. Working the investigation into his death, we were able to find a site that gave the citation that ultimately would be submitted for the award of the Silver Star. And we were able to confirm all of the information of Donnie's bravery and sacrifice that day. It was not until 1948 that Donnie's mother would be awarded with his Silver Star by the Commandant of the Marine Corps. She, from all of the family members that served, were from Swamico, Wisconsin, a small town with much pride and as much sacrifice that war could render to a small community. To think of how many times you would see a gold star hanging, the gold star flag that would hang in windows. The gold star would basically identify to the world that a son or daughter had been lost in combat. A blue star denoted that there was somebody serving overseas. And many times what you would see are entire streets lined with these pennants in the windows, and knowing how many men had sacrificed their lives on the European shores, in Africa, in Asia, or all points in between. It is one of those things that ultimately, when we did this investigation, and when we looked into the aspect of this sacrifice, we were able to share that with the family. We were able to talk about where that medal came from and what honor and what kind of a memory could now be bestowed upon the family. This is why I wanted to start this website. This is why I wanted to start this channel. It's to share this information. How many families are there, these mysteries that are out there that need to be solved? These names should not be forgotten. They're names that are etched on walls or in cemeteries, but these are living, breathing parts of history to our families. And it's imperative that we rescue these things before these men and women are lost to time. That is why I am here, and that's why I think that many of you may be joining me right now. as we progress down this path together, we will talk about many other things and many other people to come. And I would hope that you would share by email or reaching out to me by Facebook or making a comment on this episode. You ultimately can help share that information. And if there is anything that I or anyone else can do to help you to be able to uncover the mysteries of that family member or friend that ultimately sacrificed their lives, please reach out, because this is truly all of our responsibility to never forget. I thank you for joining me. The captain thanks you for joining me, and we will see you soon.